Welcome back. You're listening to Washington Watch. I'm Tony Perkins, your host. I get emails and notes from folks, and one of the things that we try to do is to make sure that we give you action items associated with the issues that we bring up, and that's one of the reasons I get the notes. People say, thank you for this, thank you for putting it in perspective. And then when I don't, and I just bring the bad news and nothing to do, I also hear from folks, and it's a good reminder, because I'm not here to build your anxiety level. I am here to make you aware of what's happening from a biblical perspective, and we're not hiding it. And as you know, we bring you the news makers. So it's not us putting our spin on it. I certainly will give you my thoughts and add a little commentary, but you're hearing from the news makers. But we also want to make sure that we give you some clear direction and action steps. And of course, always top at the list. And this is not a throwaway line. It's legitimate, and it's something that each and every one of us should be engaged in. You know what it is? I think most of you got it. We need to be praying. We need to be praying for our nation. We need to be praying for what is happening. I pray every day for our nation. Every morning, and almost every morning, I slip sometimes, but I pray for the president, regardless of who the president is. Now, I pray differently, depending on who the president is. It was a little easier to pray for the last one than this one, but I do pray for this one, that as he does what is honoring to God, that God would turn his heart toward that which is good and beneficial to the nation, that the Lord would bless it. And if he doesn't, if he moves in a direction that is counter to truth, that the Lord would bring confusion and basically just confound this administration. I'm very candid. That's what I pray. Same with Congress. So we need to be praying, because these things are big. We hear so much about the numbers, $1.9 trillion. And as I mentioned, total over the last year, when you consider the Federal Reserve and what they've done to pump into the economy, we're talking over $9 trillion. Somebody's going to have to pay for that. And the reality is what they just approved. Of course, it's got to go back to the House for approval, and then it goes on to the president. But a lot of that money is not going to be spent for 3 years. I mean, I don't understand what they're doing. It's certainly not for immediate relief. Only about 9%, you've heard this from members of the Senate on this program, only about 9% of this $1.9 trillion actually goes to the shots. They're not really vaccines, they're shots. It's like a flu shot. Only 9% to get those shots into people's arms. The rest of it, blue state bailout, payoff for those states that supported Biden, and a whole host of other things, including the abortion funding that I mentioned. We cannot tolerate that, and we should do everything we can to stop it. We should oppose it, first in our prayers, but secondly in our actions. And joining me now to talk about those actions that we can take to stop this bad policy is Travis Weber. He's Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs here at the Family Research Council. Travis, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, so let's start a whole list of things to talk about, but at the beginning of the program, we talked about the fact over the weekend, the Senate approved the relief bill, the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill, because of some modifications, including eliminating the $15 mandatory minimum wage. It now has to go back to the House for approval. Congressman Comer saying that even though the progressives aren't happy, they will vote for it. And then it goes on to the president. Because this was a part of reconciliation and only required 51 votes in the Senate, very little that could be done to stop this one. This one appears to be on its way to the president for signature after a brief stop in the House.
Yeah, Tony, I think that's correct. Unfortunately, 'cause this bill is just so bad in a number of ways. I mean, you mentioned the money, where what the money's doing, where it's going, but we need to make sure people understand how bad it is on human life. And the bill does not value human life. It promotes abortion. And this is some of the worst, the first time we've seen this kind of break from precedent for some issues, international funding and the Helms Amendment, 47 years. Certainly the worst instance of funding abortion and abortionists since the Obamacare debacle in 2010. The bill is bad in a number of ways. We really highlight how bad it is on life. And unfortunately, due to the dynamics you mentioned, it is likely to become law, but people need to make their voices heard because we have members of Congress on the record now due to a lot of votes on amendments and the vote on the bill. We have members on record on these issues, and it's clear they're gonna have to deal with that in the future.
Now, let me ask you this question, because we had some court cases during the Trump administration, kind of flip side of this, where states were not. They wanted to decide where the money went, whether it went for abortion or not. Those were some in the pipeline back during the Obama administration. But we've actually had some favorable court decisions, if I'm not mistaken, that would allow states to restrict some of this money coming into their states in terms of its application to abortion funding. Is that true?
It is true, Tony. Specifically, the Title X cases, President Trump had issued a good Title X rule preventing federal dollars from going to facilities co-located with abortion practitioners, or and preventing the money from going to those who are referring for abortion. Those cases have not been totally resolved yet, so they're still in the courts. Biden administration is likely to try to put a hold on them, stop defending them, reissue the rule. But this question of federal and state authority, as at least in the Title X context, is still playing out. It may affect other areas like this bill as well.
So could states then kind of take, this might be, obviously it's not universal across the nation, but if you have states where you've got pro-life leaders, and now that we have a majority of the states governed by Republicans, could they not say, all right, the money coming through the state, whether it's coming through this COVID-19 relief measure, but we're going to restrict those funds? I mean, that's certainly something they could fight for, I would think.
Absolutely, and we've seen this playing out. Texas, Idaho, taking certain steps, more aggressive steps to try to make sure the funding coming to them does not fund abortion. The courts may get involved. These are always challenged by the abortion groups, but
Right.
but the efforts of the states really matter. This is actually one of the resources we have at our pro-life maps, measuring where states stack up on abortion funding. And there's there's a legislative component to this, but also a matter of executive action that is at play here, very important for people to be aware of.
So there's one action step for you folks, is that even though this horrendous bill, $1.9 trillion, and as I mentioned, nearly $500 billion going to fund abortion or being allowed to fund abortion entities, you can appeal to your state leaders to restrict the application of that money that comes into your state. They're going to have to fight for it. They'll be sued by the abortion industry, but some things are worth fighting for. And this is why the founders established our federalist system, so that we have these 50 states now that can challenge what the federal government does. Let's move on, Travis, before we run out of time, because there's two other really important measures that have gotten some attention over the weekend, because Senator Joe Manchin suggesting he's fudging a little bit on whether or not he would support an elimination of the 60-vote threshold for legislators. That's the legislation. That's the filibuster that we often hear about. And that's because the left is pushing so hard for H.R. 1, which is a federal takeover of elections, and the Equality Act. Where does that stand?
Yeah, Tony, you're right. He hinted in the talk shows yesterday. Both of those bills are up, could be up for votes in the Senate. We don't have a day yet on the vote, but we could see a vote very soon on the Equality Act and H.R. 1 in the Senate. They may do hearings on the Equality Act, but may also have a vote beforehand. So these are key matters we really need folks to weigh in on. They can do that by visiting TonyPerkins.com. The first link, how to take action in Congress and in the states. Click on that. All those links to take action. Let your senators know these are really bad bills. are right there for folks to move on.
I mean, you may think their minds are made up, and they may very well be. They probably are. But still, I think you should make it as painful as possible for them to vote against their constituents. We actually saw in the House where a Democratic member from Mississippi voted against H.R. 1, joining the Republicans as the only Democrat because of his constituents who weighed in.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, it's not a game over, and it's very important that members hear from folks in their districts, and just hear from folks who at the grassroots level, because they look at what people are concerned about based on the amount of feedback they receive. And this is why we're making sure that our followers have a way to communicate easily. All that's at the Take Action page. We have a number of steps at the federal level that people can weigh in on. There's also the ongoing nominations with Xavier Becerra for HHS Secretary, others we have an action step for. And this is to say nothing, all the various ways at the state level that people can take action in their states. We're tracking some different things out there as well.
All right, just so we don't step over this, because we get, we deal with this each and every day, and I know our daily listeners will be familiar with when we say H.R. 1, the federal takeover of elections. But explain to our listeners what H.R. 1 is.
Yeah, Tony, in essence, this is a long and complicated bill that really is a major federal power grab over the authority to conduct elections at the state level. It does a number of things, but among those the areas it would affect, and areas we're particularly concerned about on matters of free speech, it would really impose burdensome donor disclosure requirements on groups making their voices heard on key policy issues, trying to bring this under the authority of the federal government to monitor and really stifle speech in those areas as a result. So imposing burdensome requirements, donor disclosure, requirements that would also just make it much more onerous to communicate for groups to get the message out quickly because of all the hoops they have to jump through as part of H.R. 1. Frankly, one of the things we've noticed, among the many things this would do, setting up redistricting commissions that would include the requirement or allow people to be screened for redistricting commissions based on religious affiliation, among other characteristics.
So let me stop you on that one first, because what that refers to is the fact that state legislatures, who are elected by the people, after the census is done every 10 years, they redraw the district lines for congressional districts, for state legislative districts, and this would take this out of the hand of the elected people of the states, and put it into these commissions. And they have this very extensive screening of who goes on to these commissions, including probing into their religious affiliation. Is that what you just said?
That's a fair characterization of this. And it's in essence, hey, the federal government saying, hey, okay, we're going to add these commissions, allow these commissions, that they're going to be done the way we want them to be done. Well, when you're doing that according to H.R. 1, you're screening for religious affiliation. And in the hands of liberal progressive activists, that's going to mean screening out certain religious views, conservative religious views, incredibly problematic. I mean, and I'm only hitting a few points here of the problems with H.R. 1.
It's a massive bill designed to secure the I'm choosing my words very carefully here, the outcome of this election. I'll just put it that way. I'll leave the adjectives off. But it's seeking to secure the majority that the Democrats have gained by changing the rules, manipulating the rules as they were in this last election. It's called For the People bill. It's more stick it to the people is what I call it. Where can people find out more? TonyPerkins.com. We've got resources. What do they need to do?
Yes, so Tony, they could, as you mentioned, that link has all the resources of what we're talking, the current items, the hot items we're covering now. The Take Action page has a way to click through to tell your senators oppose H.R. 1. We also have a resource there listed that's also available, frc.org/HR1, detailing our concerns with the bill that people can share with anyone they see fit.
Also, and we're just about out of time, but the Equality Act, we've talked about it a lot. It's before the Senate. We also have action items there at the website as well.
That's right, Tony. Same link. People click through, take action on the Equality Act. We have a resource as well for people to understand the Equality Act more if they want to read about that.
Right, and we were just talking with the comic strip creator of Mallard Fillmore that his strip was canceled over poking fun at the Equality Act and the president's executive order that would pit female athletes against transgendered athletes. This is a heinous agenda, and it must be stopped. We need to be praying, but we need to take action as well. Travis Weber, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.